Professor Quillnax stood at the front of the amphitheater with all four arms spread wide, like some kind of discount motivational speaker who'd watched too many TED Talks. His purple skin glistened under the lecture hall lights, and his three eyes swept across the assembled students with the kind of self-satisfaction usually reserved for people who correct pronunciation at parties. Welcome, welcome, my dear students, to what will undoubtedly be the most enlightening lecture of your academic careers, he announced, his voice carrying that particular blend of smugness and false humility that professors across the galaxy had apparently perfected. Today, we discuss apex predators, the hunters, the killers, the absolute pinnacle of evolutionary terror. The audience, a mixed bag of species from across the galactic community, leaned forward in their seats. Well, those that had seats. Some hovered, others oozed. One student appeared to be a sentient cloud of gas, which raised some interesting questions about tuition costs and whether they got charged for 2 seats. In the back row, Jake Riley slumped in his chair, human baseball cap worn backwards, scrolling through his tablet with the enthusiasm of someone reading terms and conditions. He was the only human in the Galactic Institute's exchange program this semester, which the university administration had marketed as a tremendous opportunity for cultural exchange, and what Jake had quickly realized meant, you're going to be the weird one for 6 months. Now, Quillnax continued, tapping a control panel with one of his lower arms while the other 3 gestured dramatically. What makes a true apex predator? Is it the claws? A hologram of massive curved talons appeared above the lecture hall. Is it the teeth? The image shifted to rows of dagger-like fangs. Is it the venom, the speed, the strength? A eager student in the 3rd row, a floating jellyfish-looking thing named Glimbus, raised a tentacle. Is it the combination of all factors, Professor? Precisely, my astute pupil, precisely. Quillnax beamed, his face splitting into what was probably a smile, but looked more like a challenge to anatomists everywhere. An apex predator represents the absolute zenith of its evolutionary environment. No natural enemies, perfect killing machines, the stuff of nightmares. Jake yawned, not even bothering to cover his mouth. A few nearby students glanced at him nervously. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 15 years, and their reputation was, shall we say, still under construction. The kind of construction where nobody's quite sure if they're building a hospital or accidentally creating a haunted house. Throughout the known galaxy, Quillnax said, warming to his subject like a preacher getting into the good parts of a sermon, we have documented exactly 47 species that qualify as true apex predators. 47 creatures so terrifying, so perfectly adapted for slaughter, that they sit atop their respective food chains with absolutely no competition. He pressed another button, and the hologram shifted to show a creature that looked like someone had given a scorpion anger management issues and access to a gym membership. This, Quillnax announced with theatrical gravitas, is where our journey into terror begins. Jake's hand went up. Quillnax didn't notice. Or, more likely, he noticed and decided that whatever question the primitive human had could wait until after his carefully rehearsed presentation. Professors, it seemed, were the same everywhere in the universe. Disappointingly predictable and allergic to interruptions. Behold, Quillnax declared, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a menacing whisper but really just sounded like he needed a lozenge. The razor maw of Centauri Prime. The hologram rotated slowly, displaying a creature that looked like evolution had gotten drunk and decided to combine a wolf, a bear, and an industrial paper shredder. Its jaws could apparently unhinge like a snake, and its 6 legs ended in claws that seemed specifically designed for ruining someone's day. Several students gasped. One made a sound like a garbage disposal eating a spoon. The razor maw, Quillnax continued, pacing back and forth with the confidence of someone who'd never actually met one of these things in person, hunts in packs of up to 20 individuals. They can smell fear from 3 kilometers away. Their bite force exceeds 12,000 pounds per square inch. They are, in essence, death on 6 legs. Jake's hand remained up, steady as a flagpole. Indigenous populations on Centauri Prime, the professor said, still determinedly ignoring the human in the back row, have learned to simply abandon entire settlements when a pack moves through the region. There is no defense, no escape, only acceptance of one's fate. Terrifying, breathed Glimbus, their translucent body rippling with what might have been fear or possibly indigestion, hard to tell with jellyfish people. Oh, but we are just beginning, Quillnax said, and you could practically hear the exclamation points in his voice. Let me introduce you to the shadow stalker of Kepler 442b. The hologram shifted to something that looked like a panther had merged with a nightmare and taken up professional assassination. It was pure black, about the size of a small vehicle, with eyes that reflected light like a cat's, but somehow more judgmental. Its claws were retractable, which several students noted was particularly unfair, since it implied the universe had given this thing stealth options. The shadow stalker, Quilnax said, really getting into his rhythm now, is completely silent when it moves. Completely. It can hunt in absolute darkness, using thermal sensing organs located along its spine. It has been known to stalk prey for weeks, learning patterns, studying routines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jake's hand was still up. A few students had started to notice. The gas cloud student drifted slightly away from him, which seemed like overreacting, but okay. The shadow stalker's hunting success rate, Quilnax announced with the pride of someone sharing a particularly impressive golf score, is 97%. 97. When it decides you are prey, you are, statistically speaking, already dead. More gasps from the audience. A reptilian student in the front row actually made the sign of what was presumably their species' equivalent of crossing themselves. And now, Quilnax said, building to what was clearly his big finale, the void serpent of the outer rim. The hologram expanded to fill the entire upper half of the amphitheater. And yeah, okay, this one was legitimately unsettling. It looked like someone had taken a snake, made it the size of a subway train, given it armor plating, and then asked a committee of horror writers to add some finishing touches. It had multiple rows of teeth, bioluminescent patterns that apparently hypnotized prey, and according to the readout, it could survive in the vacuum of space. The void serpent, Quilnax said, his voice now barely above a whisper, which was actually more effective than his earlier theatrics, is perhaps the most perfect predator in known space. It requires no atmosphere, no water. It can hibernate for centuries and wake at the slightest vibration. It has been responsible for the complete extinction of 4 separate species on the moons it inhabits. Jake's hand was getting tired, but he kept it up. Commitment to the bit, as they say. These creatures, Quilnax said, finally stepping back from the hologram and spreading all 4 arms wide again, represent the absolute pinnacle of predatory evolution. They are unstoppable, unkillable, the very definition of apex predators. And now, if there are any questions about these magnificent terrors, I suppose I can... His middle eye finally landed on Jake's raised hand, which had been up so long it might as well have been a permanent fixture of the lecture hall. Yes, Quilnax said, his tone suggesting he was doing Jake an enormous favor, and would like acknowledgement of this fact. The human in the back. I suppose you have some primitive question about classification, or perhaps you need clarification on basic predator-prey dynamics? Jake lowered his hand, glanced at his tablet, and said in the kind of casual tone usually reserved for commenting on the weather, "Yeah, so, quick thing. We domesticated all of ours." The lecture hall went very, very quiet. Quilnax blinked all 3 eyes in sequence, which was apparently his species' version of buffering. "I'm sorry, what?" "Our apex predators," Jake said, still scrolling through his tablet like he was ordering takeout and not dropping a conversational bomb. "We domesticated them. You know, made them into pets and stuff. I just thought you should probably know that before you kept going." Someone in the front row laughed nervously. Quilnax's face did something complicated that involved colors humans probably didn't have names for yet. "That's impossible," the professor said flatly. Jake looked up from his tablet and smiled. "Want to see pictures?" "Pictures," Quilnax repeated, like Jake had just offered to show him evidence of a flat galaxy. "You want to show me pictures of humans domesticating apex predators?" "I mean, yeah," Jake said, standing up and tapping his tablet. "Unless you're cool with just taking my word for it. But you seem like a evidence-based kind of guy. All 4 arms and everything. Very scientific looking." The hologram display flickered as Jake's tablet synced with the lecture hall systems, which the IT department had assured everyone was totally secure and definitely couldn't be hijacked by random students. The IT department, it turned out, had lied. "This," Jake announced as an image appeared above the amphitheater, "is a wolf." The hologram showed a magnificent gray wolf, all lean muscle and predatory focus, standing in what looked like a forest. Its eyes were sharp, intelligent, calculating. It looked like something that understood the concept of a food chain and knew exactly where it stood on it. "The gray wolf," Jake continued in his best tour guide voice, "is an apex predator native to Earth. Pack hunter, Bite force around 400 pounds per square inch. Pursues prey over long distances. Very efficient killer. Basically your standard nightmare fuel. Several students nodded. This tracked with their understanding of how apex predators should look and behave. Now, Jake said, swiping on his tablet, this is what we did to them. The hologram shifted to show a pug. Not a majestic pug, if such a thing even existed. This was a standard pug. The kind that looked like someone had drawn a dog from memory, gotten it wrong, but decided to commit to the mistake anyway. It had bulging eyes, a face that appeared to have lost an argument with a wall, and the general demeanor of a creature that had made peace with its own biological absurdity. Meet the pug, Jake said cheerfully. Same species as the wolf, Canis lupus familiaris. We selectively bred them over thousands of years. This one's name is Sir Chonkers, and he belongs to my aunt. He can't breathe properly, he snores like a chainsaw, and he's afraid of his own reflection. But he gives great cuddles. The lecture hall had gone so quiet you could hear Glimbus's nervous bubbling. That's not, Quillnax started, his voice strangled. That can't be the same species. That's clearly a different organism. Possibly a prey animal. Possibly something that qualifies as a victim of natural selection. Oh, it gets better, Jake said, ignoring him completely. We did this with basically all the apex predators in our environment. Check it out. Another swipe. The hologram now showed a large wildcat, sleek and dangerous, muscles rippling under spotted fur. The African leopard, Jake narrated. Solitary hunter. Can drag prey twice its weight up into trees. Excellent night vision. Perfect ambush predator. Very scary. Much wow. A fat orange tabby cat appeared, sprawled on a couch, belly exposed, looking like it had never had a coherent thought in its entire life. This is Butterscotch, Jake said. Also a cat, Felis catus. We brought these guys into our homes and gave them free food and health care. They occasionally bring us dead birds as gifts, which is adorable and also slightly threatening. We worship them on the internet. There are entire digital libraries dedicated to videos of them falling off furniture. A strangled sound came from somewhere in the middle rows. It might have been laughter. It might have been existential horror. Hard to say. Quillnax's purple skin had gone sort of pale lavender. This is an isolated example. Surely you didn't— We absolutely did, Jake interrupted, getting into his groove now. Want to talk about bears? Because we domesticated some of those too. Well, sort of. We keep them in captivity, breed them, and people pay money to take pictures with the cubs. We have entire facilities dedicated to this. We call them sanctuaries. But let's be real, we just wanted to hug the murder machines. The hologram showed a massive grizzly bear, rearing up on its hind legs, claws extended, looking like 800 pounds of pure rage with a fur coat. Then it switched to a video of a bear cub playing with a beach ball. That's Paddington, Jake said. Named after a fictional bear who is obsessed with sandwiches and wears a hat. This is how we process having apex predators around us. We give them human names and accessories. We make them marketable. Stop, Quillnax said weakly. Can't stop, won't stop, Jake replied, channeling every infomercial presenter who'd ever lived. Because we haven't even gotten to the really weird stuff yet. See, the thing about humans is, we didn't just domesticate predators that were useful. We domesticated predators because we were bored. He swiped again. The hologram showed something that looked like a horse, but angrier. Wild horses, Jake said. Not technically apex predators, but they kill more humans per year than most of the predators do. Powerful legs. Can kick with enough force to cave in a rib cage. Naturally skittish and dangerous. So, naturally, we taught them to let us sit on their backs, and we invented competitive activities, where we jump over obstacles while riding them. For fun. Recreational danger. Turix, the insectoid student who'd been quietly taking notes, dropped her stylus. It clattered on the floor with a sound like breaking glass. Your species, she said, her mandibles clicking with barely controlled panic, voluntarily climbs onto animals that can kill you for entertainment. Oh yeah, Jake said, grinning now. We even invented an entire sport around trying to stay on really angry cows for 8 seconds. We call it bull riding. The record for career earnings in that sport is over 7 million credits. We pay humans millions of credits to almost die repeatedly. Quillnax sat down heavily in his chair at the front of the room, which was probably against some kind of lecture protocol, but nobody seemed inclined to call him on it. There's more, isn't there? The professor said. It wasn't a question. So much more, Jake confirmed, pulling up his next image with the enthusiasm of someone about to share a really good recipe. Let's talk about the animals that we didn't domesticate, but decided to keep around anyway. Jake advanced to the next image with the casual confidence of someone who had no idea he was systematically dismantling an entire lecture hall's sense of security. Okay, so, crocodiles, he said, as a massive saltwater crocodile appeared in the hologram, all prehistoric rage and teeth. Apex predators, unchanged by evolution for millions of years because they're already perfect killing machines. Bite force of 3,700 pounds per square inch, can hold their breath for hours. Ambush predators that launch themselves out of water like scaly missiles. Several students were nodding now, back on familiar ground. Yes, this was an apex predator. This made sense. We put 'em in zoos, Jake said. The hologram switched to a zoo enclosure where children were pressed against glass, watching a crocodile sunbathe about 6 feet away. We put them in enclosures, Jake continued, and we bring our younglings to stare at them while eating frozen sugar products on sticks. We have feeding shows. We film documentaries where people get really close to them. There's an Australian guy who became famous for wrestling them on camera and saying, "Crikey," a lot. He was a national treasure. "What?" squeaked a small, furry student named Pip from the 4th row. "Different story," Jake said quickly. "Not crocodile-related. Anyway, we also have alligators, which are like crocodiles but American, and people in the southern part of my continent sometimes keep them as pets illegally. There's an entire underground market for emotional support alligators." "Emotional support," Quillnax repeated faintly. "You domesticate killing machines to provide emotional comfort." "I mean, we try to domesticate everything if we're being honest," Jake said with a shrug. "It's kind of our thing. But wait. There's more, and this is where it gets really fun." He pulled up another image. This time it showed sharks, multiple species, all teeth and dead eyes in evolutionary perfection. "Sharks," Jake announced. "Ocean apex predators. Some species have been around for 400 million years. They can smell blood in the water from miles away. They have multiple rows of replacement teeth. They're basically swimming nightmares with a great PR problem." "Finally," Quillnax muttered. "Something you people must fear." "We swim with them," Jake said flatly. The hologram showed people in cages being lowered into shark-infested waters. And then, even worse, it showed people diving without cages, just floating there, in the open water with these things. "Cage diving is a tourist industry," Jake explained. "People pay money to be in the water with great white sharks. We also have aquariums where we keep them in giant tanks so children can walk through tunnels underneath them. It's considered a fun weekend activity, educational even." Churix made a sound like a tea kettle reaching maximum capacity. "Oh, and we invented a whole week of television programming about them," Jake added. "Called it Shark Week. It's extremely popular. We celebrate the creatures that occasionally bite us by dedicating massive amounts of media coverage to how cool they are." "Your species is insane," Glimbus said, which coming from a floating jellyfish really meant something. "Listen, we haven't even gotten to the small stuff yet," Jake said, warming to his subject. "Want to talk about spiders? Because, buddy, do we have a complicated relationship with spiders?" The hologram shifted to show various species of spiders, from tiny to tarantula-sized. "Spiders," Jake said, "are incredible predators. Venom web traps, some can jump 12 times their body length. We are naturally terrified of them. They trigger something primal in our brains, and yet, there are people who keep them as pets. Tarantulas mostly. They name them, they build them custom enclosures, they handle them. There are entire internet communities dedicated to spider ownership." "But you just said you fear them," Quillnax protested weakly. "We do," Jake confirmed. "We fear them and we keep them in our homes. Sometimes in the same house. We're complicated. Oh, and we gave them a cute nickname. We call dangerous snakes danger noodles or nope ropes. We have entire linguistic categories dedicated to making deadly things sound adorable." He switched to an image of various venomous snakes. "Speaking of snakes, these guys are fantastic. Venomous. Some can kill you in minutes. We have snake charmers who keep them in baskets. We have people who keep them as pets. We have at least 3 major religions that feature snakes as important symbolic figures. We're either worshipping them or wearing them as accessories. Sometimes both." The reptilian student in the front row had put their head down on their desk, apparently trying to process this information through sheer denial. "Hippos," Jake continued, on a roll now, "kill more humans in Africa per year than any other large animal. Territorial, aggressive, 3,000 pounds of anger with tusks. We put them in zoos. We made a children's board game about them eating marbles. There's a famous cartoon hippo that wears a tutu. We took one of our most dangerous animals and turned it into merchandise." "Merchandise," Quillnax whispered. "Oh yeah, we merchandise everything. Sharks, bears, wolves, big cats, You name it. We put them on cereal boxes, we make plush toys of them for our children, we create cartoons where they sing and dance and learn life lessons. We have this thing called furries, where people dress up as these predators for fun and social gatherings. I don't know what any of those words mean, and I'm afraid to ask, said Pip. Jake grinned. Probably for the best. But here's the thing, and this is really the core of what I'm trying to explain here. Humans are what we call persistence hunters. We're not actually apex predators by design. We don't have big claws or massive teeth or venom or any of that cool stuff you've been talking about. He pulled up an image of a regular human, just standing there, looking deeply average. This is what we look like. Kind of squishy, not particularly fast, no natural weapons. We're not impressive, but we have big brains and we get really, really bored. And when humans get bored, we do weird stuff, like befriending things that want to eat us, or riding things that want to kick us, or swimming with things that might mistake us for food. But why? Glimbus asked, sounding genuinely distressed. Because it's there, Jake said with a shrug. Because we can. Because someone somewhere said, I bet I could pet that, and then they did, and then everyone else wanted to try. We have a documented psychological phenomenon where we see something dangerous, and our first instinct is to determine if we can make it our friend. Quillnax stood up slowly, all four arms trembling slightly. Surely there must be some predators on your world that you haven't tried to domesticate, or befriend, or turn into entertainment. Jake paused, his finger hovering over his tablet. Well, he said slowly, there were some. Were, Chirix asked, though her tone suggested she already regretted the question. Where? Jake confirmed. The ones we didn't domesticate. We mostly made extinct? You could have heard a pin drop. If pins made sounds in space, which they probably didn't. But metaphorically speaking, the silence was deafening. Quillnax's face did something that probably violated several laws of biology. All three of his eyes focused on Jake with the kind of intensity usually reserved for staring contests or hostage negotiations. Extinct, he said carefully, like he was testing out a word in a foreign language he didn't quite trust yet. You made your apex predators extinct. Well, not all of them, Jake said, which somehow made it worse. Just the ones that we couldn't figure out how to live with, or the ones we hunted too efficiently, or the ones that were in places we wanted to build stuff. Look, it's complicated and we're not proud of all of it. But yeah, extinction was kind of a thing we did a lot. He pulled up a new image. It showed a large, feathered bird that looked angry about its existence. The dodo, Jake said, flightless bird, lived on an island with no natural predators, so it never evolved to fear anything. Then humans showed up in the 1600s and, well, we ate them all. Also our rats ate their eggs. They were extinct within a century of us discovering them. We literally have an expression now, dead as a dodo, which means extremely dead, permanently dead. We turned our extinction event into an idiom. That's not an apex predator, Quillnax protested, grasping at straws like a man drowning in bureaucratic loopholes. You're right, Jake agreed. Let me show you an actual one. The hologram shifted to show something that looked like a tiger but bigger, with teeth that extended past its jaw, like nature's most aggressive overbite. Saber-toothed cats, Jake said. Multiple species, actually. Massive apex predators. Those teeth, 11 inches long, could take down prey 3 times their size, dominated their ecosystems for millions of years. Then humans showed up during the Ice Age, and they were gone within a few thousand years. We're not entirely sure if we hunted them directly, or just killed all their prey. But either way, the result was the same. He swiped through several more images in quick succession. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave bears, short-faced bears that made grizzlies look like teddy bears, the Atlas bear, the Japanese wolf, the Tasmanian tiger, which wasn't a tiger at all but was still an apex predator, and we definitely hunted that one to extinction as recently as the 1930s. Each image flashed by like a very depressing slideshow at the universe's saddest funeral. And that's just the ones we're sure about, Jake continued. There's a whole scientific debate called the Quaternary Extinction Event, where we argue about how many species of megafauna died out because of us versus climate change. The current consensus is probably a lot because of humans. We're not great at keeping records when we're actively surviving, so the actual number is likely higher. Turps raised a shaking appendage. But surely, if you're not apex predators yourselves, how did you manage to hunt these creatures to extinction? You said you have no natural weapons. Oh, that's the fun part, Jake said, his grin taking on a slightly manic edge. We invented weapons. And then we invented better weapons. And then we got really good at throwing things. Humans can throw objects with incredible accuracy and force. It's actually one of our evolutionary advantages. We're ambush hunters who can attack from range. He pulled up an image of a primitive spear. Started with these pointy sticks. Then we made them pointier. Then we figured out how to throw them really hard. Then we invented the atlatl, which is basically a stick that helps you throw sticks harder. Then we invented bows and arrows. Then crossbows. Then guns. Then bigger guns. We're very good at the whole escalation thing. Huh. But that's not persistence hunting, Quillneck said, though his voice had lost all its earlier condescension and now just sounded tired. You're describing pack hunting with weapons. Oh, you want to hear about the persistence hunting? Jake asked, leaning forward eagerly. Because that's actually more terrifying. We don't have to be faster than our prey. We just have to be more stubborn. Humans can run for hours, days even, if we're trained for it. We have this thing called sweating that cools us down so we don't overheat. Most predators can't do that. They have to stop and rest. He pulled up a video clip showing a human jogging across a savanna, following an antelope. So we just followed prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We walked it to death, literally. It's called persistence hunting, and it's one of the most patient, methodical, and psychologically disturbing hunting strategies in nature. We're the slasher villain in the horror movie that just keeps walking towards you no matter how far you run. The gas cloud student made a sound like air escaping from a balloon, which might have been their species' version of a panic attack. And here's the thing, Jake said, really getting into it now. We did all of this without being apex predators ourselves. We're not at the top of the food chain because we're the biggest or the strongest or the most naturally armed. We're at the top because we're cooperative, creative, and we absolutely refuse to give up. Also, we apparently have zero sense of appropriate fear responses. Bloop, an amphibious student who'd been silent until now, raised a webbed hand with the slow, deliberate motion of someone who knew they were about to regret asking a question but couldn't help themselves. Yes? Jake said encouragingly. What predators, Bloop asked in a voice like a sad trombone, did humans not domesticate or make extinct? There must be some that you left alone, some that you decided were too dangerous or too difficult. Jake's smile faded slightly. He looked down at his tablet, scrolling through images with a more somber expression. Honestly, he said, not many, and the ones we left alone were usually trying to bring back from the edge, conservation efforts and all that. We got really worried in the last century about losing species, so now we have massive programs dedicated to protecting the predators we used to hunt. We've got tiger conservation, wolf reintroduction, shark protection laws. We're spending billions of credits trying to undo what we did. So you recognize that eliminating apex predators was wrong, Quillneck said, a flicker of hope entering his voice. Oh yeah, totally, Jake agreed. Turns out ecosystems need apex predators to function properly. When we killed all the wolves in one region, the deer population exploded, they ate all the vegetation, and the whole environment collapsed. So we had to bring the wolves back, which meant catching wolves, moving them to new locations, and basically forcing the ecosystem to reboot. We're very good at identifying our mistakes after we've already made them. This is a nightmare, Chirix whispered. Your species is an ecological nightmare. I mean, we prefer the term keystone species, but yeah, nightmare is probably fair, Jake said. Oh, also, we made some species entirely dependent on us. Dogs can't really survive in the wild anymore, not most breeds anyway. We've selectively bred them to the point where they need us to survive. Same with most livestock. We've created entire species that only exist because we want them to. Playing God, Quillneck said flatly. More like playing God's slightly irresponsible younger sibling who got into the creation toolkit, Jake corrected. But sure, if you want to be dramatic about it. Quillneck stood there for a long moment, all four arms hanging limply at his sides, looking like someone who just received his tax bill and discovered he owed money to 3 different governments. His 3 eyes blinked in a sequence that suggested his brain was trying to reboot and failing to find the right startup files. I think, he said slowly, carefully, like each word was a fragile thing that might shatter if handled incorrectly, that we are going to end the lecture here. Technical difficulties. Yes, technical difficulties with the holographic display system. The holographic display was working perfectly fine. Everyone in the room knew this. Nobody said anything. Class dismissed, Quillnax added, and there was a quality to his voice that suggested this wasn't so much a dismissal as a plea for mercy. The lecture hall erupted into the kind of chaos usually reserved for fire drills or surprise exams. Students scrambled for the exits with varying degrees of speed and grace. The gas cloud students simply dissipated, which was either a teleportation ability or a very dramatic fainting spell. Glimbus hovered toward the door, while maintaining what they probably thought was a safe distance from Jake but was really more of a, "I'm obviously fleeing from you" distance. Jake stood up, gathering his tablet and backpack, with the casual air of someone who'd just given a perfectly normal presentation about perfectly normal things. He made his way down the aisle toward the exit, and students parted before him like he was carrying a contagious disease or possibly a live grenade. Chirix was near the door, fumbling with her bag, mandibles clicking nervously. Jake gave her a friendly wave. "Hey, Chirix," he called out cheerfully. "You want to see pictures of my dog? His name is Captain Biscuits. He's a golden retriever, super friendly. He once tried to befriend a bear." Chirix made a sound like breaking glass being fed through a wood chipper, dropped her bag entirely, and fled through the door with the kind of speed that suggested she'd discovered hidden athletic potential through sheer terror. "I'll take that as a maybe later," Jake said to himself, genuinely puzzled by the reaction. The lecture hall emptied in record time, leaving only Jake, a few forgotten belongings, and Quillnax, who had collapsed back into his chair and was staring at the ceiling, with the hollow eyes of someone questioning every life choice that had led to this moment. Jake paused at the door. "Hey, Professor, great lecture, really informative. I learned a lot about galactic apex predators. That void serpent thing was genuinely cool." Quillnax made a sound that wasn't quite language. "Anyway, see you next week," Jake continued. "Oh, are we still covering symbiotic relationships? Because I have some really interesting examples about gut bacteria and the human immune system that I think the class would love." "Please don't," Quillnax whispered. Cool, I'll prepare some slides," Jake said, apparently interpreting desperate pleading as encouragement. "Have a good weekend, Professor." He stepped out into the corridor where clusters of students were gathered, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing back at the lecture hall door like it might suddenly sprout teeth. Jake walked past them, humming something that sounded suspiciously like a song about being the very best, like no one ever was. His tablet chimed, a message from the university administration. "Dear Student Riley, your presence is requested at a cultural sensitivity workshop scheduled for Thursday at 1400 hours. The workshop is titled Understanding Interspecies Communication and Not Terrifying Your Fellow Students. Attendance is mandatory. Please confirm receipt of this message." Jake stared at the message, genuinely confused. He typed back, "Sure, no problem. Is this about the thing in xenobiology class because I thought I was being pretty educational? Also, should I bring my emotional support alligator certification? Just kidding, I don't have one. Yet." He sent the message and continued down the corridor, passing a bulletin board with various student announcements. Someone had posted a flyer for the Galactic Student Union meeting. Someone else was advertising a study group for advanced quantum mechanics. And someone, very recently based on the digital timestamp, had posted a notice that simply read, "Human students, please stop explaining Earth biology. We're begging you." Jake took a picture of it and sent it to his mom with the caption, "Made the bulletin board. University life is great." As he walked out of the building and into the quad, where various species were enjoying the artificial sunlight and definitely not discussing his lecture presentation, Jake pulled up his tablet and started browsing. He had a report due next week for his comparative civilization class about cultural differences in pet ownership across the galaxy. He typed into the search bar, "Emotional support alligators, legal status galactic community." Then, after a moment's thought, he added, "Also, can you ship dogs to space?" Somewhere in the administrative offices of the Galactic Institute, a notification pinged on a monitor. An AI system flagged Jake Riley's search history for review. A tired administrator looked at the flag, looked at the searches, looked at the calendar showing how many more months the exchange program lasted, and made a note to update the university's insurance policy. In the lecture hall, Quillnax finally pulled himself together enough to gather his things. He picked up his tablet, closed down the holographic display, and noticed that Jake had left the image gallery open. Against his better judgment, he scrolled through it. Dogs, cats, domesticated predators, pictures of humans swimming with sharks, humans riding horses, humans keeping spiders as pets, and at the very end a photo of a human child no more than 5 or 6 years old, sleeping peacefully, with their arms wrapped around a massive dog that had to weigh more than the child did. The caption read, "Best friends." Quillnax closed the tablet and walked out of the lecture hall. making a mental note to request a sabbatical. Maybe one focused on studying species from nice, safe, predictable planets where the dominant lifeforms hadn't decided that befriending apex predators was a reasonable hobby. Behind him, the lecture hall lights automatically dimmed and the holographic display powered down, leaving only the faint echo of what had been, objectively speaking, the most disturbing educational presentation in the Galactic Institute's 300-year history. And somewhere in student housing, Jake Riley sat at his desk, opened a bag of chips, and started working on his slides for next week's class on symbiotic relationships, completely unaware that he'd just inspired a new mandatory course for all exchange students titled Cultural Context and Appropriate Sharing of Terrifying Information. The universe, it seemed, was learning about humans one deeply unsettling lecture at a time.